Hi, it's Amberly with Mountain Tribe Homestead, and this is another video showing a little inside look at what went on in our lives for this week. This video is posted a little bit late because our lives got thrown off track and off schedule a little bit. I got sick, we had a birthday one week, and then the following week we got a puppy, so everything's kind of been off schedule, but we do still have a crazy boy dog that keeps us super entertained. We also are still having our hens laying our eggs, and that is so wonderful. We love fresh eggs. I had lots of help in the kitchen with every recipe I made. Every time I do anything, the 7-year-old likes to come help me in the kitchen. Here she's rolling out some leftover pie crust, and we took that and wrapped it around some home canned apple pie filling and made these little mini apple pie dumpling creations, and they were delicious. I don't always cook breakfast and every meal from scratch, but when I do use oats for breakfast, I try to soak them the night before. By soaking your oats the night before, it really helps with the digestive process. So here's the oatmeal the next morning. I typically only sweeten it. I don't do any special flavors because everyone likes their oatmeal a little different, and that way when we have extra, I can just store it in the fridge, and when we reheat it up, we can flavor it as we like. This week we also had lots of crochet projects going on. The 14-year-old is working on her cardigan. She's making wonderful progress with that project. I wasn't feeling well at all this week. I was super sick, and I decided while I was resting that I was going to go ahead and pull out my big bag of yarn that I went and prepared for my temperature blanket project I was going to do for 2023. I bought all this yarn at the end of 2022 so I would be ready to go in 2023, and I have been so unbelievably busy I haven't had a chance to even start this project. So I took this week as an opportunity. I knew I was going to have to sit around and rest for more than usual. Look at him, he's so sweet. He doesn't like when I'm not feeling well. I used this time as an opportunity to go ahead and work on the temperature blanket. So since I've been thrown off track with my schedule, I also kept forgetting to record things that we did. So a lot of things in this video may be repurposed from things that I recorded for Instagram. So I do apologize for the screen flipping one direction to the next direction and back and forth. So throughout being sick, I had lots of tea. The 7-year-old set up herself a Polly Pocket village on the floor in front of me where I was resting, so we were still able to hang out and have our fun conversations while I did my temperature blanket and whatnot. I did muster up some energy to still make some meals in the kitchen. We put together, the 7-year-old and I put together some breakfast muffins the night before for breakfast one morning, and we had a choice between blueberry muffins and chocolate chip muffins. I have a basic muffin recipe that I use, and I just add in whatever extras I want to make it whatever flavor we're gonna have. And since I wasn't feeling very well and I didn't have much energy, I decided to throw together a quick family favorite meal, and it's just melting some bacon grease and slicing up potatoes and onions and frying them up in a pan for a quick meal. I usually season it with salt and pepper, and I'm probably going to say this word wrong. I say it as cumin, but a lot of people I've heard say cumin. I've heard it said both ways, so whichever way you say it, that's what I'm putting in there. So I just add all of that together in the pan, let it cook, and I cover it, and then I just let it cook for a while. And sometimes it takes a little while to cook, but it's easy peasy, and you just put it on the stove and You don't really have to do much work to it, and this is just the meal that I needed to make because I really didn't feel like being in the kitchen for an extended period of time. All right, another meal that I put together this week was chili mac, and I started off by cooking up some macaroni noodles and browning some hamburger. After the burger was browned, I added some beans, and I'm just grabbing whatever I find in my pantry and throwing it together. There's really no recipe or measurements, and I'm just this recipe, if I make it again, will probably be completely different. But I had tomato sauce. I had 2 different kinds of tomato sauce in my pantry, and so I added that in there with the beans and the hamburger. I didn't have any onions, but because I used them all up with the potatoes, but I probably would have added some onions in here. I did find this way back in the freezer, this riced cauliflower. So I decided to go ahead and add that in there just to thicken it up a little bit. We had some leftover peas. I threw that in there, which actually wasn't bad at all. I'm just adding some spices like salt and pepper. I think I threw parsley in there. And just mixing together whatever I find in my pantry. And it really came together nicely. The riced cauliflower, I would never add this to it again. I think that really affected the texture of it, but it wasn't horrible to where it ruined the meal. But I think that it would have been much better without the riced cauliflower. But I also added paprika in there, and then I added some dried onions. I like a lot of flavor in my food, and I also like to experiment with different things too. So I'm just throwing this together with whatever looks good and whatever smells good. So I get it all mixed in there, and I get it cooking a little bit and get all those flavors mixed together, and I just let it cook down a little bit before I add in the cooked noodles, because I do not want the cooked noodles to cook any more than they need to, because they're already cooked. I already cooked them. Obviously, this pan is way too small, so this was a chore trying to mix it up without making a huge mess. I think I did fling some noodles. There they go. Fling some noodles on the stove, but I got it all mixed up in there, and it was filled all the way to the tippy top. And this meal, actually, it turned out pretty good. And here it is, all put in a bowl, and it was even better adding some cheese on top of it. But everything's better with cheese, am I right? So this was a great meal to use up just some odds and ends in the pantry, and it was a meal that I made a lot of that fed us for a few different meals. Typically, when I make bread, I make it at the beginning of the week, but since I wasn't feeling so well, like I said previously, the schedule got all off track. So in the middle of the week this week, I think I made bread, and this is a different recipe than I made in the last video, but it's also a no knead recipe. Again, I wasn't feeling well, and the less steps the better, because it's less work. So I put together a recipe for a no knead recipe for bread, and the no knead recipe usually comes together pretty sticky. Every recipe I've ever used that doesn't require kneading, it always makes it with the dough being sticky, and it always creates it to not rise as much as a regular bread recipe. It still rises a little bit. So here I am, it's the same. You let it rise a little bit, and then you put it in your pans, and then you let it rise in the pans, and then you cook it. So here I am putting it in the pans after it rose the first time. And then once that's risen, I will put it in the oven, and you can see that they did rise. They just didn't rise much, which is pretty typical for a bread recipe that doesn't require kneading. It definitely is a delicious recipe, and we loved this bread. And I've made this bread before, and I will continue to make it when I don't feel like kneading bread. But it definitely was good. We made refrigerator dough this week. I did not record it because my schedule was all off whack and I didn't remember to record it. But we did make the refrigerator dough, and we did start making the jam rolls, and this week we were doing peach butter. And so I got the dough all rolled out. I've got the butter on top of the dough, the melted butter, and I'm taking peach butter, which is just like apple butter but with peaches instead. It's made from our homegrown peaches on my parents' property, and it's really delicious. If you haven't had peach butter, I highly recommend you try it. I did not prefer the peach butter on the jam rolls, which they were peach butter rolls, but they were good. They just weren't as good as the jam or jelly. So here I am making sure the seam's all pinched up after I rolled it up, and once it's pinched, I will cut it up and I will put it in a pan after I slather melted butter all over the pan. And here they are. And these are ready to go in the fridge for the next morning. They will rise in the fridge, and when I wake up in the morning, they will be ready to go straight into the oven once the oven's preheated. We had a little bit of excitement on the mountain. Right down the road, a house caught on fire. It was very, very, very close to our house, and this is the fire burning before the fire department arrived. It was a little nerve-wracking. We have had the mountain catch on fire a few times in my life, and that can be pretty scary. So this was an event, and we were home for it, and so we got to watch the whole thing. The fire department did show up. The mountain didn't catch on fire. They put the fire out. The poor man lost his house, though, and it was tragic, but this was an out of the ordinary event in our week. Another one of the meals I made this week was tacos. It was Taco Tuesday. We try to eat tacos on Tuesdays when we eat tacos, because why not? It's fun to say, right? So we didn't have any tortillas, so I decided let's go ahead and make some. So I'm making flour tortillas. I don't have any masa flour, so I'm giving flour tortillas a go. And this is the first time I made flour tortillas, and it worked out pretty well. I don't have a tortilla press, but so my tortillas kind of look a little wonky. They're not perfectly circular, but that's okay, right? So I'm mixing all the dry ingredients together, and then I'm going to mix together the wet ingredients. And once they all come together, they're gonna form like a sticky dough, and I just have to keep working at it and adding flour and keep working with it until it becomes a specific consistency. Once it all kind of comes together and gets a little too difficult to continue mixing with the spoon and I need to start using my hands, I'm just poured it right onto my work surface. I floured it up really good because it is so sticky, and got my hands all floured up and decided to start kneading it together. And after a little while, it took a little while, but after a little while it comes together and formed a nice ball of dough, and that's exactly what it looked like. And once I reached that point, I then cut it into 4, and then cut it into 8, and then cut it into 16, so that they were all equal portions. And then I take each one of those little triangles and I formed a ball of dough, like a little golf ball sized, I guess, ball of dough. And then the directions told me I needed to pat them down into a flat disc and let them rise. So here they are. I put them in discs and I let them rise for a little while, and I guess they didn't really rise, they were resting. And then, like I said, I don't have a tortilla press. I would like to get one, but I just don't have one yet. So I'm rolling them out by hand so they are not perfectly circular. But this worked just fine. Then I just kind of walked it over here to where I was frying them up in the pan, and I separated them by parchment paper. Make sure you do that if you make tortillas, because they will stick together. And then you just put it in a pan. You don't need anything in there. You just put the tortilla in the pan and it'll puff up, and once it puffs up with little bubbles, you flip it over and cook the other side for about 20 or 30 seconds, and it turns out perfect. I think that I could have rolled them out a little thinner, but they turned out pretty good. So here I am spending my morning with my boy. Every morning we sit on the couch and hang out together. He has his leash on him because he knows that when he's on the couch and he has his leash on him, he has to be quiet until everyone wakes up. And he's pretty smart. He knows the rules. So I don't even need to hang on to his leash. He just needs to have it clipped, and that's kind of the message that gets sent to him. And I drink my coffee and we just enjoy the morning. And a lot of times this is after I have put breakfast into the oven that I prepared the night before. One of the things that's on my weekly schedule is different activities to do with Luca, our dog. And I saw this idea online somewhere, and I cannot for the life of me remember where I saw the idea from, but I saw someone making their dog, actually they were huskies as well, and they were making them a little doggy parfait. Luca cannot have peanut butter because he has a zinc disorder. It's a very long explanation, but long story short, peanut butter will not allow him to absorb zinc in his body, so he can't have peanut butter. So instead, I use plain Greek yogurt, and I just make sure all the ingredients are dog friendly. And he gets chopped up carrots and frozen blueberries, a few treats, and strawberries. Now, recently he's decided he doesn't like strawberries, so these are his chicken liver treats that he likes. Recently he decided he doesn't like strawberries, so his little doggy parfait will get changed up. Sometimes I freeze this so it takes him longer to go through it, and sometimes I give it to him just right after I make it. With him, part of the reason I do this is because with him being a Siberian Husky, he needs a lot of stimulation, and this is sniffing and licking, and that is 5 minutes of that is equivalent to like 15 or 20 minutes of playtime, and allowing him to have frequent stimulation in all different ways helps him so he doesn't become bored and be destructive out of boredom. But he loves these little treats. Sometimes instead of putting it in his Kong, I will put it on his lick mat and freeze his lick mat. But I do my best to make sure he's entertained regularly. So every day he has different activities, and we rotate through the different activities that he does. And on this day, he got his Kong treat, and there he is waiting patiently. And he's just such a happy boy when he gets that. I do 100% absolutely label the dog ingredients for the dog. We do not share them, just for anyone that's wondering. We went through and did an experiment this week. I saw Three Rivers Homestead, Jessica, I saw her do Pop-Tarts with some pie. I think she used pie crust, I'm not sure, but I had some leftover pie crust from a pie that we made, and we decided to try out using it for Pop-Tarts, and it was really fun. So we rolled out the pie crust really thin, and we cut it up, and I don't have the patience to cut it up into perfect shapes, so I just cut it up and then matched up the shapes the best I could to each other with the sizes. And we did one tray of our favorite pineapple strawberry jam that I make, and one tray of some leftover grape jelly that I had bought a while back. And here's the 7-year-old crimping the sides of the dough together with a fork, and I'm rolling out the other dough, getting it ready to cut up. Now these turned out really, really well. I think that next time we do it, I'm going to add more jam or jelly on the inside, because it ended up being more crust than filling. And I also ended up cooking them a little bit too long. I lost track of time and got distracted, as I do sometimes when I don't put a timer on my oven. And you'll see that they do end up a little bit crunchy, but they were both really, really good. Both flavors. And she even took the time to create little letters on the Pop-Tarts with the fork. As you can see, she's labeling them, and I'm in the background making a huge mess because I'm not patient. I need to figure out how to be patient, but I make such a huge mess because I'm so impatient at times, and it's ridiculous. But these turned out really well, so if you feel like it, you should try them out. So here they are, ready to go in the oven. You can see the letters that she put on each of the Pop-Tarts with the fork. I thought that was really creative of her. And there's my huge mess. Don't judge me. But these turned out really, really well. They were good. Some of them cooked really well, but you can see those other ones are a little bit overcooked, and they were just a little extra crunchy. We had a birthday this week, and the birthday girl requested crepes for her birthday breakfast. So the night before, I got the batter together to sit in the fridge, so I woke up extra early and made crepes. And then the birthday girl woke up, and the crepes were ready for her. We have a family tradition that when there's a birthday in the house, they have a special birthday breakfast, and we sing happy birthday, and they open a few presents. I totally forgot to record any video, so all I have is pictures. I apologize, but it was a fun morning. And then in the evening, when everybody was off work and home, we ended up having a little bit of cake. And then we had family visit over the weekend from the rest of the mountain and all the way from Massachusetts, and she had a party over the weekend. So that was our week. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time, friends. Bye!